of power investigation is going to reach deep into Trump world. The question isn't whether they'll find something, it's whether or not they'll find enough to impact public perception and members on the other side of the aisle. My next guest is going to factor into this. Corey Lewandowski, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be back.
You're on the list. How do you feel about it?
Well, look, I'm joined by others on the list that include the Government Service Administration, the FBI, the Department of Justice, and a number of other government agencies. So I'm not really sure what they're looking for. But what I can tell you is any emails that I had have all been turned over. I'm sure they've all been gone through multiple times. I have been very candid. I've testified in front of the House committee on 2 separate occasions for north of 12 hours. I've testified in front of the Senate committee. The members of Congress have access to all of that information. So I'm sure if there's anything there that they want to talk about, they'll have the opportunity to review those.
You'll comply?
Well, look, they'll have the opportunity to review that testimony. I've been very clear that I've had nothing to hide because, I've been very, very clear. There was no collusion. There was no cooperation, no coordination
that you knew
between
about.
The Trump campaign.
But if I had told you about what
there,
Manafort was doing and Stone was doing, you wouldn't have said there was no collusion and no problem, right?
Look. I think I can't justify what Paul or what Roger has been accused of doing. And look, I have nothing to do with that. But when I was there, I can tell you, I was never contacted by a government official who the Obama administration was in charge of the ballot and security integrity during the 2016 election. I never got a phone call that said the Russians are trying to hack into the campaign and we're doing something about it.
No, but the FBI came to you guys and told you exactly that in July. The FBI told you guys exactly that.
Chris, I was gone in July, to
I know,
be fair,
but I'm saying
but the FBI,
it's still part of the record.
But Chris, the FBI never came to me and said Paul Manafort is someone who we have an interest in.
I understand that.
Or there are potential bad actors. And if they were so concerned about that, they should have come to us and said, we have some concerns. You should be aware of this. That never, not to me, they never did.
But don't say they didn't come to us. They did go to the campaign. You just weren't there anymore. The reason I'm asking whether or not you're going to comply is because you haven't answered everything that people wanted to talk to you about. In the beginning, you were pushing back and saying that you didn't want to talk about things and presidential immunity and all this stuff. He's got to assert the immunity, not you.
I never asked for presidential immunity whatsoever.
Not immunity.
What I will tell you is behind the closed doors.
These are privileged conversations. He's got to deal with that, not you. If you're asked questions, will you answer them?
Chris, I sat there for 12 hours, and before I left, after the last 4 hours, I said, I will sit here for another 4 hours to answer every single one of your questions to the House Intelligence Committee. I said, before we leave today, I want to be very clear. I will sit and answer every one of your questions. And I went around the room, and nobody had any more questions. After 12 hours of questioning,
well, because you had said there were areas you wouldn't talk about. That's all I'm saying.
I said I will talk about anything that happened when I was at the campaign. Of course I will. And I've been very open about that, and I'll do it all the time. That's what my expertise is. That's what my firsthand information is about, is any information that transpired while I was at the campaign.
All right, look, I think as long as you play it straight, you're going to be fine, and we'll see where it goes, and we will police it because there's no reason for overreach on any level. Let me ask you about a couple of quick other things. If they vote against the president's national declaration of an emergency, what does that mean?
Well, it means the president's going to veto it. There's clearly, as your previous guest said, Christine Quinn said, they don't have the votes in the House or the Senate to override the president's veto. And it is very common for Congress to send bills to the president, which he vetoes. It's happened to every administration since basically George Washington, I think.
This would be his first because McConnell has insulated him from that.
Yeah, but Chris, to be fair, Barack Obama didn't have any vetoes in his first 2 years either because he had a Democrat-controlled Congress. Once the Republicans took over, that's when the vetoes happened because that's what happens in a Congress that is not all governed or controlled by one party.
So you don't think that it's an expression that he's doing this the wrong way? You want to build the wall, you want to build more fencing, fine. Whether the situation justifies it or not, that's a political debate, but don't do it this way. This is what the law was for. You said it yourself. It's not an emergency.
Well, look, I think what we're looking at is a very small amount of money, which the national emergency is actually going to be able to access. Most of the money is drug forfeiture money at the Treasury Department, money which has been allocated by Congress. So it's the last $3 billion that the president is going to declare the national emergency for. And I believe, and I could be wrong, Chris, doesn't happen often, but maybe tonight, that the Democrats have already filed suit to stop him from doing this. So if that's the case, ultimately, this will reside in the court somewhere, and they'll make the decision if he has the authority to do it. But I believe under the Constitution, it's been used 58, 59,
Never
60
for this.
times.
That's why Mitch McConnell said, don't do it this way.
Chris, don't forget, Barack Obama used a declaration of an emergency when 12 people died from the swine flu. That's a fact. Many more people have died from people coming across the border illegally than 12 people.
But that's not the standard. It's usually about freezing assets and doing quick things where the president has to mobilize the power of the purse to get something done in the moment and then report to Congress and return it to them. This is not an urgency.
But
there is no epidemic of flu or concern.
Barack Obama determined that 12 people dying from swine flu was enough to declare a national emergency. This president has determined that the thousands of people have been killed.
Moment. This president said, I don't have to do this right now.
Thousands of people are dying. Chris,
thousands of people are not dying because there is no wall.
Absolutely.
Correlation is not causation. Just because these people have come across illegally and they've done wrong things doesn't mean that you're a wall away from fixing it. And I got a news flash for you. There is going to come a time where there will be a reckoning about what the reality is on the border and why it is that way and why it is not. And we are going to see that those people are not asking for a wall to fix what their biggest problems are. Let me ask you about one other thing while I have you. The big story in the New Yorker, to me, is not news. Great reporting, great reporting, but not news. This TV outlet, state TV, as I call them, Fox, in prime time, they say the president does. I've never seen anything like it. That's why I say Sean Hannity, never seen power like that in the media. The president does what he says. Are you worried about that?
Well, Chris, let's go back and point out the facts. Look, Bill Bradley during the Kennedy administration of the Washington Post was the go-to source. Ben Rhodes' brother, who's the deputy national security advisor under the Obama administration, his brother is the president of CBS News. So let's not point out the fact that this is the
my brother is the governor of New York. Those are all individual cases.
Chris,
it's not a systemic effort of an entire network to do nothing but parrot the president's positions and ignore anything that's bad for him and attack other journalists who report differently.
Chris, are we saying that CBS News didn't get special access to Barack Obama because the deputy national security advisor's brother was the president? Of course they did.
No, not like with Fox.
The Washington Post.
Not like with Fox. He gives them all the interviews. He gives just a handful to anybody else. Look, it's true.
This president has been more accessible to the media than any president in modern history.
He won't even come on CNN.
That's absolutely true.
He only goes where he gets a pat on the back. And that's fine for a politician to seek safe, warm waters. That's what they do. Fine. But for an entire organization to reward that is something different. We've never seen anything of this
I don't think it's an entire organization. Look, Shepard Smith is very critical of this president. Neil Cavuto is very critical of this president. Judge Napolitano has been very critical of the president on numerous occasions. So it's not an entire network. You are picking individuals
to make a case against the general from a management perspective. I know Shep. I respect his work. Brett Baer. There's a whole host of people that people don't even know that well that I know at Fox. I used to work at Fox.
She's a tough
I know they're good people there.
Correct.
But in primetime TV, and from a management perspective, they are pawns for this president, and you know it. And you guys went crazy when one of our contributors gave questions and topic areas, whatever you want to call it, before a town hall where there is no opponent to Hillary Clinton. You went nuts, and I agree. Now you find out Fox gave debate questions to Donald Trump. Silence. Come on.
I don't know that. I don't know when they gave him a debate question. I was never made aware of that. That never happened when I was there. I can unequivocally say that.
No.
But look,
you can unequivocally say that you didn't know that they did that. You cannot say it didn't happen.
Chris,
read the report.
I did the debate prep for 12 presidential primary debates. Fox News did not give us one question. That's an unequivocal fact. The report is wrong. Look, the report goes on to say that Sean Hannity and Bill Shine's, their kids are each other's godparents or whatever. That's also not true. So let's just not take every word that's in the New Yorker to be factually accurate. And by the way, as you know, Chris, you have relationships with people you work with at the building.
All the time.
And so it would make sense that you would have a relationship
I have no problem with Shine.
The workspace.
I have no problem with Bill Shine and Sean Hannity being close, feeling like brothers. They work together. I have no problem with it. I'm talking about from a management perspective. What they do there is something we have never seen before with their primetime lineup.
Well, we've seen it on the other side, though,
Never.
Chris. Look at the hatred and the vitriol at MSNBC every night. They have made their living and their network the I Hate Donald Trump network. That's a fact. Their primetime anchors all hate Donald Trump. They don't have conservatives on. There's not one conservative on MSNBC who has a television show to give the other side. They've made that strategic decision.
And who's the Democrat in prime time over there? They're like right of Attila the Hun.
Rachel Maddow. Rachel Maddow, you don't think she's a registered Democrat? Chris
No, I'm
Hayes,
talking about
he's
on
a registered
Fox.
Democrat?
Where's the center perspective? Where's the regular Republican perspective in their primetime lineup? Come on. Anyway, look, let's leave it there. I'm not going to hate on other talent. That's not my job. I'm just saying we've never seen anything like this from an organizational perspective.
Don't point out the inaccuracies. Look, it's networks choose to do it for ratings is what they do. MSNBC, CNN, they all do it. It's just Fox does on the conservative side to be a balance.
Yeah, I disagree with the premise because that's not the job. You got to have both sides. That's why I have you here. I have the left here. I go at it. Maybe that's why I don't rate higher. I should pick a side like everybody else over at Fox and MSNBC. Maybe
you're going to do just fine.
All right, Corey, be well. Thank you for making the case. I appreciate it. So should the audience.